Welcome to the Lead for Pollinators Creating Pollinator Habitat webinar series. I am Michelle Colopy, Executive Director of Lead for Pollinators. Our webinars are supported by the following sponsors: Hispanic Marketing and Public Relations. Visit HispanicMPR.com for interviews, presentations, and more. Beauty Beyond Belief Seeds specializes in wildflower seeds, heirloom vegetable seeds, grass seeds, regional wildflower seeds, and special use wildflower mixes, including their line of 4 great pollinator mixes. Shop for your garden and pollinator habitat needs for U.S. Western planting zones at bbbseed.com. 2 Million Blossoms magazine will awaken readers to the vast diversity of pollinating insects and animals. This quarterly magazine will delight, entertain, and name those well-adapted creatures buzzing through our world, because the more we know about pollinators, the better we can provide habitat. Subscribe today using the discount code word LEAD and receive $5 off the subscription rate for 1 year. Visit 2millionblossoms.com. OPN Seed has partnered with Lead for Pollinators with pollinator mixes created for beekeepers and anyone who wants to attract and support pollinators. You can get native seeds for eastern U.S. planting zones at OPN Seed. Go to the Lead for Pollinators website donor affiliations page and select Support Our Cause to view featured seed selections, and a portion of sales generated from our website will help support our work. Missed a webinar? You can view these topics through our pay-per-view access. Visit our website for the recorded Login to Learn webinars and select a topic today. Our presentation and discussion today will be about the value of pollinators on CSA and urban farms. As we become more aware of food security and food deserts, the value of pollinators is readily apparent when farming vacant lots of cities, as well as sustainable farming in rural areas. We use the word urban in today's presentation to simply make the difference between rural or legacy farmland and farmland divided into smaller acreage for gentleman farmers, and farming that has returned to cities on vacant lots or large community gardens. Our speaker is Denise O'Brien, the founding director of the Women, Food, and Agricultural Network. She has farmed in southwest Iowa for 45 years with her husband Larry Harris and operates a CSA farm called Rolling Acres that includes 3 acres of fruits and vegetables and 6 acres of apples. She also raises organic chickens and turkeys. In addition to farming, Denise has been involved with community volunteering and policy work in the agricultural sector. Denise lobbied with the Iowa Farm Unity Coalition, directed the Rural Women's Leadership Development Project of Prairie Fire Rural Action, and was president of the National Family Farm Coalition. Denise has served on numerous advisory boards with the Community Food Security Coalition, the Farm to School Council, and the Iowa Women's Foundation, to name a few. She was a W.F. Kellogg Food and Security Policy Fellow from 2001 to 2003. From 2011 to 2012, Denise was a USDA advisor in Jalalabad, Afghanistan. For all her hard work, Denise has received the 2005 Practical Farmers of Iowa Sustainable Agriculture Award, the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Iowa Farmers Union, and the Athena Award from the Atlantic, Iowa Chamber of Commerce. In 2000, Denise was inducted into Iowa's Women's Hall of Fame. Please welcome Denise O'Brien.
Start with doing a little introduction about the farm. And I'll push the screen share and I'll bring up this there. And I will start a slideshow right here. And here we go. This is Rolling Acres Farm. And my husband and I have been farming since 1976. And it's the farm he grew up on. So, and it's in the neighborhood where the people of his family, the Harrises, came to in 150 years ago. So, and to honor those that came before us, this was the territory of the Iowa Indians, in the first peoples that were here. And so this is Rolling Acres, and we do Iowa. People think Iowa is a flat state, and actually it's pretty rolling, and we live in the rolling hills. And here is our high tunnel. And this is like, I love these kind of pictures because they're early in the season when the weeds aren't as big as they could be as they get. So we have a 72-foot by 30-foot high tunnel in the background that has roll-up sides, and it has also it's on a track. It's an interesting, it's a movable tunnel. So we move it in the spring and in the fall. And it just takes 4 people to move it. It's on this long track. And so we put it out about April 20th and plant the tomatoes a month earlier than we can do it outside. And then we push it back to the west side, and we can grow brassicas and things into the winter. So I've been able to produce something sell something every month of the year, and can grow into December and start in February. So it's there's some hardy varieties of things that grow in the high tunnel. And here is here's some bees pollinating the zucchini. And I think we shouldn't see that. Anyway, the click to title. I don't know what I'm doing there, but so bees are pollinating the zucchini, and we're setting up, as it said in the in my bio, we've been farming for 45 years. We've had bees off and on. We've really been concentrating a lot on the native pollinators, and in the last few years we've been keeping hives, and this is our neighbor cousin that is helping to get us our bees situated. So here's some of they look nice at this time of the year too, when you look at things like this. And then in the picture on the right is our grandkids are in the back of the pickup watching what we're doing. So they're keeping their distance. So this is why we farm. It's just, we have milkweed for the monarchs, we have kale for the tree frogs, and we have as much wildlife. So we are 17 acres, and it's really important to us we call ourselves a sanctuary because it's the only place in this monoculture of corn and beans that different species of animals and insects and can come. And we have a good variety of birds that we hear now. The orioles are about the last to return, the orioles and the swallows, and they're all here. So everybody's like in place for the summer until they start leaving in the fall. And here is a sign. We belong to the Practical Farmers of Iowa, and above that sign is Honeybee Heaven. And these signs are promoted by Pesticide Action Network, I was the chair of Pesticide Action Network for a couple of years ago. And on the right, unfortunately, is what happens. I took these pictures on just south of our yard, and just this is the cornfield. This happens every July. They're spraying for fungicides, and we are listed on a sensitivity directory, and the chemical applicators are supposed to be checking that. I'm always on the lookout, and I record the wind. I do all the things that I need to do in case that we have drift. And you may know there's a lot of issues now with dicamba, and it's a really dangerous herbicide, and it volatilizes. It could be put on the ground or it could be put on the plants, and then 2 weeks later it could rise up and spread for several miles. So it's a really dangerous chemical, and unfortunately, there's been a lot of suits, and Bayer, now that owns Monsanto's Roundup and glyphosate, has been sued. Dicamba will be up next, I suppose, but unfortunately it'll mean that a lot of people have lost their lives or become very sickened from it, and we've lost a lot of bees. And this is the reason we farm. So these are our children. We have 3 children and we have 8 grandchildren, and so we're all pretty perky. This actual photo, Christmas a year ago, not this year, not the COVID year, but the year before COVID, was 50 degrees and we were all outside. It was just this, we have a thing called climate change, and this is part of what's happening. So there's our children, there's our brood, and yeah, that's the end of my little introduction for the farm. So I'll stop sharing and go back to, yes. So that's my brief introduction, and the practices. I'm going to read some questions that have been sent to me and answer those questions. I don't want to be referring to the paper a lot, but it says what practices implemented on your farm attract to support pollinators, and that really support our farm and what we growing vegetables. We're really well known for our kale and our beans, our green beans. We're known for, and those definitely need pollination. The tomatoes, the peppers, all of those things, the watermelons, the cucumbers. So we really depend on the pollinators, and we, like I said, we have one, almost 2 hives, and we're continuing, but we also do a lot to enhance the native pollinators. And
Denise,
yes,
if I could,
yes.
So certainly, the native pollinators, which I know Dr. Jonathan Lundgren in North Dakota, is doing a lot of research on the parasitic wasps, which are very valuable to farms because they lay their egg on a pest, and then the egg just eats the pest.
Absolutely, yes. The
So have you left any areas of your farm, say, in a sense, fallow, or even if it's a kind of a sandy area that you can't grow anything, you just let that be for those ground nesting bees and wasps?
Well, yes, there are, not intentionally, because it's so ingrained in us now to have cover crops on everything. And so I was just thinking that, but actually where I see the ground nesting wasps, and that are in the high tunnel, in the areas that, so I have, my high tunnel is 30 feet wide, and we have 8 beds in that high tunnel that are 30 inches wide, and we have walkways that are like 12 to 18 inches wide. So in those walkways, we have the ground, wasps that go in there, and they make their homes and nests in there, and it works out fine because we've not had any altercations or anything that I can recall, but it's really ingrained in us now that we can't keep. That's very interesting, Michelle, because we're just supposed to have everything covered all the time, and for the health of the soil, but we have to think about the health of the ground insects, for sure.
Well, and again, everywhere, my city yard, your farm, there's just soil that, I'm sorry, nothing's going to grow there. It just won't, no matter what you amend it with, no matter how much you try.
Right.
It's even when people put a garden plant in their front yard and it moves. because it doesn't like where it's growing. So, you know, it's the nature of that soil, and it's just not going to grow anything. So to me, that says, okay, nature says, no, this is a house for someone else.
This is for
Somebody else wants to dig a hole in the ground and they want to live there.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yes.
You've just given me something to really think about as I go about my work. And you know, that's really good, Michelle. I appreciate that a lot.
Well, you know, and I think it's so much of, and again, I am not a farmer. I just read history. And I was on a webinar earlier today when people were talking about, in one place, Extension was doing a good job now. And I think Extension used to be there after the Dust Bowl. It was there to help farmers recover.
Right.
And to help educate them and support them in their activities.
Right.
And then somehow it started to lose all its funding, and it just got decimated. And now we need to bring it back. But it's really hard to bring things back when you've decimated the budget.
Exactly.
But Extension is so valuable that we'll work with farmers on different land types that they have.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and I think those things are important because we can't keep doing things the way we've always done things.
No, I think there's lots of indications on that, and you're so right about Extension. You know, they lost their mission. You know, they're and in fact along their charge, and they've been groping around to try to find where they fit in now, and I think it's a very interesting looking at that. And there's wonderful people in Extension. There's just really good people. And yet our land grant colleges have sort of turned to depend on corporations for their funding and things. So it makes it a little bit difficult. So
well, and I think it's harder too because, and we'll get back to the questions, it's harder because I've talked to folks even in Ohio who are Extension, and they're responsible for 14 different counties.
Yeah.
You know, from north to south, east to west, you've got different soils, different watershed, even sometimes a different climate. Even in Ohio, Terry and I will talk about the difference in the climate. She's 2 weeks ahead of schedule than I am up north. So when you're asking one Extension person to manage 14 to 20 some counties, and to build those relationships with farmers and beekeepers and others, it's not an easy task.
No. And I think that from what I see here in Iowa, and we have a Southwest Iowa Beekeeper Association, and the people, there's a family in particular that keeps it going, keeps the meetings coming. Our state beekeeper will come out and give us lectures, or that before COVID.
Yes.
and that there's all this before and after, but you know, and there's just lots of good information. My husband and I spent last winter we eat breakfast and watch a bee video, and found some really good people that we enjoyed. There was a man in Vermont, I think his name is Palmer, that we really liked. And then there was a guy in Florida that had a really good sense of humor, and I can't remember his name, but it was fun to watch his. He would talk about bee sex and make funny jokes about it. So we really, but that's again how we've learned, because there hasn't been the in place with with our land grant college especially. So we've and our state didn't fund a apiarist position for a couple of years until the Beekeepers Association you know, lobbied the state until they got one back on staff. So
what was it that inspired you to take on beekeeping after all these years of farming vegetables and fruits and corn and soy surrounding you?
Right. It was actually honey. I was really wanting to have honey from our own farm, and honey that we could have for our grandchildren and for our children. And that was an inspiration. It's like and we're still learning. This is a big learning curve for us. And I think the learning is, and we have other things. So there's balancing what we're doing with adding another thing on top of that. And what we weren't quite, last year we weren't quite ready for a swarm, and we had a swarm. We knew it was going to happen. We were getting ready to do it. It looked like it from the box and from the hive. And so we called up a friend, and he told us everything to get ready to do, and where to put the hive, where to put the super that we, had ready and everything. And Larry was up in the front end loader on a tree limb, putting it in place, and they left. They were just, and we had some people here buying from our greenhouse. They were buying some plants, and two little boys go, "Oh, the bees, the bees, the bees," and they watched them just swirl off. So
Yes.
so giving them accommodations has been a challenge for us. And knowing when that is. It's just, I was thinking today, since I was going to be giving this presentation, that I think there are natural people who are naturally good at doing this, and then people who struggle. And we kind of struggle, and I think maybe because we make it harder than it is, possibly. We just feel like we need to know all this information, and so anyway, we're still on that learning curve, and our pursuit is for honey from our farm.
Okay. Well, I think
Yeah.
Terry, who teaches a lot of beginning bee classes, and I've talked to, and I've taken a beginning bee class, as long as you're always learning from the bees, just like you're always learning from your land.
Yes.
And you get some education and you get a good mentor. But there's the old adage, you've got to listen to your bees, just like you have to listen to your land.
Yes, absolutely. I think you're so right. We're not in control of they know what's going on, and you're absolutely right. And so many times we think we know, and try to do it from that perspective. And that doesn't always work.
Yes. So since you have your greenhouse and
Yes.
you sell a lot of your own crops at a farmer's market, and you're eventually going to have the honey, not right away, it always takes them a while to build up that honey. What kind of education are you doing for, I guess, the public, even just as selling, some zucchini and some apples and a turkey at Thanksgiving? How are you helping to educate the community then through your CSA farm about the value of pollinators?
That's a good question. And what we feel like, because we've been organic from 1976, we've been organic farmers for that long. We've taken a different path than most people. So we consider that our farm is outreach and education. And so we are continually, when people, come, we have open houses. We do field days. There's about 4 of us farmers in about a 20-mile area that are do the alternative crops. We grow food for people to eat rather than commodities and ethanol. And so that we're always doing. In fact, I was talking to my neighbor today, a young woman who is really helping me learn marketing and social media and things. We're doing this. And we were talking about what we could do next winter to prepare people for the farmers market. It's like, in our county, it's really funny. We don't have a lot of support. We have local, the Chamber of Commerce promotes local. There's all this thing about local, and yet people don't connect the dots with food, with buying local, but not so much with growing food local. And it's so easy to go to the grocery store. And so, there's things that, so we're continually doing outreach and education. And in the past, we have had school children come out, and that's always a good place. That's always good. Now the school budget didn't have money to bring the buses out 6 miles from town. So sometimes we go into the classroom and teach, especially now. We did a lot when our children were growing up, and now our grandchildren are in the schools with some of the same teachers. So we reach out to them, and it's in educating our grandchildren on all this is when really where I think we win, in that they I have a 10-year-old granddaughter that's going to be an entomologist, she says, and she started out just loving bugs, and so we have really reinforced that. And we have a lot of praying mantises around here, so we can catch them and hold them, and the tree frog, like I showed you, and the monarch butterflies. We have a lot of milkweed around, and this used to be a pathway for them. We would in our yard years ago, it looked like the trees were dead on the ends, but they were just covered with monarchs that were headed south. And we tagged the monarchs. And some people are the naturalists in our county, and we'll tag the monarchs. And I think a couple years ago, one butterfly was found, one monarch was found that was tagged here in this county. So it was that was quite an event that happened. So
you were talking then the outreach and education and bringing kids out. So are you able through your CSA, or have you historically applied for any USDA or farm program support grants or SARE grants to do your work?
Not personally, but I have with groups of people and specialty grants that would be through our Department of Ag in Iowa, where it's for education and outreach to create. We've done brochures on where to buy local in our region of the state, and honey is always on there. We have a number of honey producers in Western Iowa, and so they're really promoted. We have I'm trying to think, we've got people that not only do the honey but make the candles and do all of the spin-offs that happen from raising bees. And that's it. I always have beeswax candles, so someday I'll make my own beeswax candle, but not yet.
Right. I think it'll take a few more hives
I think
to get enough wax to do that. So,
yeah.
And before I forget, I do have to ask, you mentioned the frogs on kale. Are the frogs eating pests on the kale, or are they eating the kale? I'd like to know what's eating kale.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen them eat the kale. They like to hide there, and I would assume that they are eating the pests.
Yes, that's okay. Because I don't know that they could chew the kale. They are just tree frogs. Okay. So since you do have corn and soybean around you, and you talked about the pesticide sprays, and the EPA doesn't believe the drift happens. They don't have a definition for drift. They ignore the drift. They just say, don't let the pesticides drift, even though there is no definition. But how are you dealing with, and especially now that you have your own hives, because you will see a bee kill instantly in your hives if it happens due to pesticides. The native pollinators, you might not notice as much. So what are some of your concerns that you've got about protecting your bees and in a sense then as an extension your native pollinators?
Right. And I have a good relationship with the farmer to the south of me, although they do use the helicopters and that, but he is a young man who went to school with my kids, and like just a couple weeks ago he called me and he said, Denise, we're going to be spraying with this. And so I get everything. I make a list of what he tells me. I have it here. And in fact, I try to educate him as well and say, well, Javen, you know that atrazine is an endocrine disruptor, and that men are experiencing sperm, I don't remember how I said it, but that's affecting men's sperm production. And I don't know how he took that. He was on the other end of the phone, but I try to do that. And he has been very sensitive to do, and he has a bit of a buffer. It's always up to us to have the buffers. This is the thing with organic vegetables and fruit production, or with bees. We have to have, it's our, up to us to do those things. And so he has a short buffer, and he sprays when the wind's in the north when he can, or early in the morning when there is no breeze. And he's not using, we've had numbers of conversations about dicamba, and he is not using that. And in fact, he's worried that other people are using it because it could kill his beans, and he raises beans for seed. So you know, he's got a specialty crop in a way. It's still soybeans, but so yeah, and we register on the sensitive drift watch is a I think it's pretty nationwide now.
Mostly, yes.
Yeah, we had our own Department of Ag have theirs, and then they switched over to drift watch. So every spring, I get an email from the person who's in charge of that saying, have you registered this year? So we have that registered in our, you know, and cross our fingers that the people will be looking at that, the chemical applicators. Our friends up the road had a bee kill 2 years ago now, and it took everything. And and this is the thing that happens over and over. It seems like it's the reporting time takes so long. There's not instant. So Nathan and Emily found out a year later that yes, indeed, their bees had been killed, and by what? And in that intervening time, they worked with their neighbors to let them know that, you know, this was going on and what happened. So that's one of the things, and also as an organic producer, we're supposed to contact our neighbors and let them know. So, and in fact, one of the things we found out is that our farm actually is more protected if we have bees on it than it is if we have organic fruits and vegetables. It's just, yeah, people are very sensitive to the bees and not so much to the fruits and vegetable parts. So
yes, yeah, I've taken many of those calls from beekeepers, and even out in Iowa, who were very angry that someone was flying over spraying the pesticides, and the stuff just drifts. Because you'll get those applicators who don't look at the drift watch site because it is voluntary.
Yeah,
we had one of those sensitive crop registries here in Ohio, which the state in Ohio now has gone over to drift watch. But no matter which one it was, the state run or drift watch, it is voluntary to register. It's voluntary to look at the darn thing, and it's voluntary to tell the farmer what you're spraying. And the biggest issue I've always found with pesticides, and I'll try not to get too much on my soapbox with that one, is the salesperson or the pesticide applicator just says, okay, what is the pest you have to kill? This is what will kill them. They never look at the label truly as to what is in there, what non-target organisms it's killing, what time of day, what type of wind speed you should apply it at. So, I mean, I've had farmers tell me, and you know this in farming, certainly, you don't have as an issue because you don't have 1,000 acres of something, but you could start spraying something on a field in the morning, but by the time 10 o'clock comes around in the morning, it's now warmer, the sun is higher in the sky, it changes how that chemical is going to react in the field.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I've had to go out to the field, and this is the other thing, a lot of the farmers don't do their own spraying, so they hire the co-ops to do it. The co-ops should be looking, but they are on a schedule, and if it's windy or if it's different things, they've got to hit the farms when they hit the farms. And I've gone out to the field and told young guys usually, you know, and not really well protected, I say, you know, you can't do this. I'm certified organic, I have bees, and the wind's in this direction is taking it directly to where I am. And I said, call your boss and tell him I'm asking you to leave. And then, you know, I just do that. And then I found out that one helicopter picture that I showed, that I went up to, they were up, a semi truck was parked at the top of the hill about a quarter mile from us, and I could see it up there. And the helicopter would land on that, refuel, and refill his tanks. And I took video of it and I went up there, and this is always when I approach, everybody's like always rolling down the window or rolling their eyes or whatever. And so the guy rolled down his window, and I said, you know, what are you spraying? And, you know, and all. And it turns out these guys start in the south and work north. They're like custom sprayers, and they're not even local co-ops in that. They're on and they don't even know the lay of the land or how, you know, how things work in a local place. They're just doing their job of spraying crops. And you know, and it really shocked me. You know, you have the the wheat harvest, it starts south and moves up to the North Dakota and finishes in Canada. I think these guys are in the same, I can't remember where he said they were from, but maybe Mississippi, Kentucky, places like that. So they have no local knowledge of, the lay of the land, and they're just doing their job.
Right. But I find that part of the job they don't do is read the labels and protect themselves. I had even a neighbor who had the backyard sprayed for mosquitoes on the other side of the fence for my bees. And the applicator was in shorts and flip-flops.
Yes.
And it was going to rain in 20 minutes. And he even pointed out it's going to rain in 20 minutes.
Oh.
So, and he didn't know, there's the old adage of EPA registers the pesticide, so it must be safe. And I have to always, I'm sure you're doing, it's supposed to kill something. So it's not safe. Safe means it's like water and you can drink it. You can't do that with these. So, I do find a lot with farmers on the organic side, and especially with beekeepers too, we have to educate our neighboring farmers and the applicators. Yeah. And you often just get two guys in a truck coming by.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And a friend of mine's father who farms, and is conventional farming, she told me that he told her that, so this is definitely third-hand information, but the last pesticide application training he went to, they did talk about bees. And usually they haven't been doing that. They just learn, the micromillimeters and the different names of things and that, but never talking about that neighbors might be organic or might be keeping bees. So that was a new one on me. I don't go to those things, so I don't know, and maybe I should go, but yes.
Yeah, I know the American Association of Pesticide Applicators because I worked with them when I was with the Honeybee Health Coalition as a volunteer, and so they've been trying to educate their members. But I think, you're a local farmer. People know the lay of the land. Yeah. All politics are local. So is farming, really. Yeah. So that when you just have two guys in a pickup truck, they don't have a sense of ownership of the community.
No.
So they don't care what they're doing to other agricultural stakeholders. So as you have been on this family farm for so long, obviously it sounds like you've got a lot of connections in the ag community. Mm-hmm. Have the farms pretty much still stayed in the families around you, or have they been sold to bigger?
Oh, that's another good question. It's a few years ago, and I can't remember how long ago, the formula for land ownership kind of changed, and it went to, there are more landowners now and tenants. And so it used to be an operator was a landowner, and now the operators are tenants. And given the land shifting and the different generations, the farmers, we all know that we see the age of farmers is getting older and older. So, and one of the things that Women Food and Agriculture Network has studied has been women landowners, and women own nearly half the land that's rented out. So, like my neighbor across the farmer across the road, he's rented that land. So more land is rented out than ever before, and many farmers that farm several thousand acres of land will have 10 to 15 landlords, landladies, because land is still held in that family. So so there may be a 300 acres. So all these 300 acres or 400 acres make up that 1,000 acres. And so each one of those. So I've been in this position, but I imagine that March, when they go renew the leases and things like that, that it's a pretty time consuming thing for farmers to do. And one of the things with women being landowners, Women Food and Agriculture started a program called Women Caring for the Land, and we've found out over the years. We started this program in 1998, and we started looking into women landowners. And women, when asked what they'd like to do with their land, women would say, I want families, I want natural resource and conservation practices, and it's exact opposite of what's happening. And so over the years, we've had learning circles with women, and many women who had inherited land from their husband who passed knew that, and their husband was a conservationist, knew what was going on their land was not right. And yet they felt intimidated by their tenant, even though they were the land owner, and felt that if they told their tenant what they wanted on the land, that they'd lose that tenant and that wouldn't rent the land, not understanding that there was probably a list of 25 people who would rent that land, because land is so valuable and it's such a commodity to, you know, and so the situation now is that farmers are continuing to buy farmland. We have a pretty weak corporation law in Iowa, but we're finding now is investors are increasing their portfolios by having land purchases. So so the land is changing hands, and it's, you know, what can I say? I've advocated for years and years for family farms, and family farms can be large family farms or small family farms, but that system of land ownership is really important, and the to get long-term things done for the land, and that would be, you know, so I'm getting a little bit off of the subject of bees, but it incorporates that whole feeling of the land and the passion that you have, the connection that you have is getting further and further away from people, and the guys that are out there farming now are pretty much tractor drivers, and they're doing things that the co-op will say this is the way you do it, or the seed company will say this is the way you do it. And if people are noticing, there's a big push now for healthy soils. It's a big push, and that there are actually living beings in the soil that will help and work with us, you know, to make our soil healthier and our land healthier. But it's a long slog getting that understood. And when agriculture adopted an assembly line type of attitude towards you know, uniformity and corn and beans and, you know, and specialization. So many people are now, there's hardly any livestock on the land. It's in buildings, and the chickens and the pigs are, and the beef are going there. And what the people who are doing sustainable agriculture are trying to convince other people is that we need the animals on the land to help make the lands, you know, healthy. And again, it's a long slog, because there are good people that are saying it, but there's a bigger voice and more money on the other side. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting though, because in one sense that's the same with beekeeping. You'll hear the beekeepers from the 1970s, and even the way my father kept bees, you put up, you were good, you didn't have to do anything.
Yes.
So, but now you have to check for the various and sundry pests. You've got to truly monitor for swarming, because if you're in an urban area, you want to be a good neighbor. You have to learn to listen to the bees and what they're telling you, just like you need to learn to listen to the land again. Yes. And I think that I think I've had this conversation with Terry, when we put greed first, greed typically I find kills. It either kills our bees, kills the land, so it kills the crop. And if you destroy everything that builds the soil, including allowing pollinators to just go in that little sandy spot, and you're not going to grow corn, soy, or anything there, just let it be a sandy spot.
Right.
It will still be productive in the end, because you're allowing, you know, in a sense, the cannibals, the pests that will eat other pests,
right?
You know, so you have to have that balance, and that's where I think extension, we lost extension and the value of extension, because they would have been able to guide everybody in agriculture, whether it's beekeepers or farmers or ranchers, better. Instead, we've focused on the money, instead of the long-term sustainability of the farm and the farmers.
Right. And you know, and that's and I mean, now I it must be the same in Ohio, but we have, you know, there's more trees, there's more stuff coming out of the more vegetation coming off the land because corn is now $6 and beans are like 15, 14 and $15. So, and it's just like, I don't know why these guys don't ever learn that when they start, when they overproduce, then everything falls through. And so, but right now it's greed that's making everybody, you know, dig up every part of the land that they can, take out the trees, take out the pollinators, the pollination, you know, the things that pollinate, you know, spray the ditches. Heaven forbid a weed comes from the, you know, out of the ditch. And, you know, it is. And that's what worries me. I sort of have a question about, I've read things, different things, and one thing, I've stopped eating almonds because of the situation with the almonds, with the use of water, with the use of bees, and bees being transported there just to do this monoculture of almonds. And that I've read a lot of, and you could educate me on this, I'm sure. I've read a lot of things about it, and it's very disconcerting because we're doing this one crop, and we've got almond milk, we've got, you know, we've got all this stuff now, and I just have a really hard time putting an almond in my mouth knowing all of this other stuff.
Right. Well, and there's so many diseases that, again, even with honeybees, when the Varroa came in, because the model, the financial model for commercial beekeeping switched from honey production to pollination contracts, you were moving these bees across the country, spreading that pest. And they also spread small hive beetle. So that forced then a change because of the economic change, loss of habitat, less honey production. So how do beekeepers make their money? So as we change with the crops, you're weakening the soil. You have more soil erosion, you know, because it's just the one crop, you're sucking the life out of it. We're forgetting that there is this balance. And I think as farmers, and especially folks in the city, I was on a call today with folks, and actually then over in the UK as well. And in France, they have banned all homeowner use of pesticides.
Oh.
Only farmers can use pesticides, and you better have a good reason. And that's all pesticides, not just neonics. So I think sometimes in the cities, we're getting a little more wise to this. One, we have less green space, so we want to protect every little square foot of green space. But out in the further in the Midwest and the plains, yes, you have land, but if you're going to kill it, what's the point?
Right. And the monoculture, the lack of diversity, that's the thing. And when you were talking about this, it's like all the dots connect, you know, they connect. We're doing, you know, single sourcing, we're doing, when we put things in their little boxes or whatever, and we don't have any cross pollination, then it's, you know, it leads to not so good, you know, endings, and we don't find those things out until 30 or 40 years later when we don't have things. I was reading today in about pollinators that they contribute $24 billion to the economy, and that honeybees contribute 15 billion of that, and that, you know, and managed bees are the most valuable, is what I was reading in that Forbes thing. And yet, if we manage bees only to be using them as pollinators, as you suggested, and we move them from place to place, then we've created that, you know, a system that doesn't value what those bees are. I mean, it does in a way, but it's a monetary value, not a value about what they do to everything else. And our lives especially.
It's almost a stockyard animal is what it becomes, something that can just go out to slaughter.
It's another livestock, you know. It's just, it fits in there with the factory farmed pigs and the factory farmed chickens. We've just done that, and the model hasn't suited us the best, given, look at climate change, but it's the model that was embraced, and it's the policy that was put into place by, you know, many people knew that the results were going to be what they were going to be, but they went ahead and did it anyway. I think that's what they're finding out with the glyphosate and those things. You know?
Well, I think it's been studied that humans love their short-term gratification. Yeah. They don't want to think long-term. But it's interesting when we compare, the way things are going in the rural farming, and you have some farms that get bought up in development, and then you get the gentleman farmers. Yes. We have there are beekeepers out there who will keep bees on a wealthy person's land because it's a great place for them to keep it, and then they're able to help that person change how they use pesticides, which means they reduce pesticide use, and they have another place to put bees. And so it helps the greater ecosystem by having beehives, not just 3,000 of them in one area, because that's overwhelming to the natives. But I find certainly in 2008, when we had the whole foreclosure crisis, and in the Rust Belt states where I live, and it was some work that I did, I was doing a lot of foreclosure prevention. But so many neighborhoods, the older neighborhoods in the cities especially, they would tear down houses, and you could buy the lot next to you for $1. Yeah. And you could farm on an extra lot. There are areas where you could get a couple of acres for really $1 per lot. Wow. And people were doing farming because they didn't have a grocery store near them. And some of them were folks who actually moved to the city from farms. And that is a wonderful way for the urban farm movement to have taken off. Now we're having to contend with cities who don't know what to deal with the people who have chickens. Bad enough with beekeepers, but even then we've got chickens.
Towns,
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But so many people want to, and now with the pandemic too, people have started gardening. And they want to know where their food comes from, and they are actually seeing the difference in that food that is picked right out of the garden in the backyard, as opposed to having it shipped from California 3 weeks before it's even ripe.
Right, which is a good precursor to the fact that at some point California is going to be out of water. Arizona is going to be out of water. I was just reading the Lake Mead that has bathtub rings. There's no more water in the Colorado to suck out, and that means Las Vegas. That means Los Angeles, and and those things not only affect the humans, but they affect the animals and the insects that rely on water. That they for survival, and our gun-ho, embracing of progress, and that is a detriment to, the long-term viability of what we're doing.
So I guess kind of to sum up, what do you have as advice to folks to reach out to all farmers and supporting, whether it's the indigenous, immigrant farmers, people of color, women, young and new farmers, as well as the urban farmers, how we can all work to put that balance back into the ecosystem and expand and recognize those opportunities for farming in the urban areas, as well as small farms, large farms.
Right. Well, I guess one thing I would say is that as a farmer, we're in the type of farming that we do, the vegetables and fruit production, beekeeping, and that, is that we're all educators, and we have to continually be the educators and be, what do I want to say? The word that comes to my mind is not be smug about what we know, but sharing, and the other part of it is that we're going to have to fight tooth and nail, because we are a small entity. Even if you brought us all together, we just have to keep picking away at policies that aren't in the best interest. We have an opportunity, I think. Now we have a USDA that is looking into racial inequality, the history of the USDA being a racist organization, an agency, and preventing farmers from getting into farming, and that there's an awareness that's going on right now that I think we can take advantage of and promote. And it might be just a little window that we have to do that. But as much as we think it'd be nice just to go and shut out the world and be a farmer, I'm thinking that at this time, in this time and place, especially with climate change, it's maybe verges on irresponsible, you know, and the we can grow food for people to eat. We can teach people how to grow food, but policy runs so much of what we do in our lives that we have to be an influence in what that. So we need to join organizations. We need to be, you know, helping lead, you know, buying a membership to lead. We need to, you know, Women, Food, and Agriculture. Those are organizations that are bucking the trends and you know, working towards, you know, a more fair and equitable world. And that we can't forget that, you know, there's a lot of social injustice and that we need to have a social justice agenda. You know, and maybe people don't like hearing that, but you know, I've been at this for 45 years now, and we haven't had many losses, many wins over those 45 years. And when I look back and I say, well, you know, and things change because we have a farm bill every 5 years. Things change, and this is the next farm bill is in 2023, and so. And fortunately for me, I'm in a district where my representative, who was the first woman elected from Iowa into Congress, is into the House of Representatives, is on the Ag Committee and Finance. So she's been out to my farm. She understands that it's not just about ethanol and commodity agriculture. And so that education, not only for our community, but for, you know, the people who make the policy that we have to live with.
Right. Well, and it's interesting. I was on a virtual conference today. It was actually the River Rally conference. So it's a focus of water. And I've been there now 2 years in a row trying to push pollinators and water because bees do drink water. But, you know, and people are always trying to figure out how do we make this change with people. And as you said, first off, don't go in with a smug attitude. Nobody likes to listen to somebody with an attitude.
Right.
But my feeling too is you've got to find those allies. As beekeepers in urban areas, when we want to make sure we have a beekeeping ordinance, we go find the chicken people and we align with the chicken people, because usually chickens and bees go together somehow. And we have to find those ways to find the allies. I was speaking at the River Rally Network conference with a gentleman out of Oregon who's with the watershed council in his community. And, you know, I said, you've got to reach out to beekeepers to work with you to help protect the watershed. You've got to find those allies, whether it's your local foundation, whether it is the pesticide applicators or the co-op. Go talk to somebody. When they've got kids and you start talking pesticides and the damage pesticides can cause, they start to listen. Especially with chlorpyrifos out there, and you know, it causes brain damage in small children. So we have to educate folks, and you can do it, again, as you said, without the smug attitude, but you got to find out where someone else is coming from. And build those allies, because farmers can't do it alone, and beekeepers can't do it alone. But we're all working together for healthy soils and clean water and clean air and clean food.
Well, and the thing is and for years and years I resisted this. It was like I was always waiting for someone else to do it. And, you know, there's somebody else, surely somebody else is. And it's like I learned years ago that we are the ones we are waiting for. So it's up to us. And I had that on my wall in front of me for a long time, you know, that we have to take the initiative and find the people and build that those alliances. Like you say, we're all in this for, you know, clean water, clean air, you know, the climate change that we're dealing with, it's there, it's real, and there are those alliances that can be a voice, a bigger voice to, and that's what I've been working with the Iowa Farmers Union, with the Isaac Walton League, with I'm trying to think of there's a Sierra Club, and there's Women in the Watershed. I'm doing a watershed thing next week, I think it is, but I forget about some of these, the titles of some of these things, but you're right, it's broader than just beekeeping. It's, you know, it's broader than just organic farming. It's a part of, we're all connected, we're all part of this earth, and we have to preserve her as much as possible so that we can survive.
Right, right.
Human beings can survive.
Yes, yes. Well, I really appreciate having this conversation with you and for you talking about your farm. I'm going to see if my slides might work this time. I heard in the chat that they did not. So I'm going to try to share my screen, and we'll go to here. Come on and share, just so that I can, there we go.
Oh gosh,
See if we can go one more. Oh, I bet it's not going to do it. Okay. It's sad when we're technologically challenged. It just is. So slideshow, go from the current one. There we go. So thank you again very much, Denise, for talking with us today. And our next webinar is in this series is June 9th with farmer, beekeeper, and author Shannon Tremboli, and she's going to talk about trees for bees and their importance to pollinator habitat. So everyone come back and join us on June 9th. And thank you again very much, Denise. It was a pleasure talking with you.
You're welcome. It was my honor. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you for joining us today. We were pleased to provide you with this education.